Grace and peace to you from God our Father and the Lord Jesus Christ. Tonight we're in Revelation 21, verses 1 to 8. And next week we will deal with the beginning of the fourth and final vision in chapter 21, verse 9. Because what we're at here, these last 8 verses, or I should say the first 8 verses of chapter 21, are the last 8 verses of the third vision. I remember this from a long time ago. There are 4 times John says he is in the Spirit, which I take to mean, like in Ezekiel, in the Spirit means he's in a vision. He's being given a vision. The first vision was of Jesus appearing on the Isle of Patmos to deliver messages to the 7 churches. The second vision begins in chapter 4 and runs through the end of chapter 16. And in that vision, John sees himself in the heavenly throne room. And you remember some of Jeff's sermons, right? The heavenly throne room in chapters 4 and 5. He sees the one who's seated on the throne. He sees the lamb that had been slain, even though called the Lion of Judah, it's a slaughtered lamb. And so that whole section from chapter 4 to chapter 16 is John seeing himself in the throne room of God, and he's watching how things are happening. But he's watching it from heaven. He's watching it from the throne room of God, and he's seeing how all the things are playing out. In chapter 17 and verse 1, John's in a different vision. He is in the Spirit in verses 1 to 4, and this time he's on earth. He's watching this from here. All right? He's on a high mountain. Well, we'll get to high mountain in chapter 22. But he's in the wilderness, and he's watching it from an earthly perspective, you might say. Even though he still sees things in heaven, he's also he's standing on the earth. And these 8 verses are the last of that vision. If you remember, chapter 17 is the vision of the harlot, the Babylon, the rider on the horse. That is this image of evil that is dominating the earth, the empire that is dominating the earth and shedding the blood of the saints and hoarding all the wealth in chapter 18. And in chapter 19, we have the destruction of that evil. And we talked about chapter 20, some weeks ago, back in August. We talked about chapter 20 and how that gives us a picture of, okay, when God is dealing with this beast, what's happening to the saints? What happened to the martyrs? Where are they? What are they doing? And chapter 20 answered that question. But now we come to the moment of the final end. That is, the beast and the false prophet and the dragon, Satan, are thrown into the lake of fire at the great judgment day, which is at the end of chapter 20. But now, okay, what happens to the people of God? If this is what happens to the evil thrown into the lake of fire, what happens to the people of God? How does this story end? All right. And that's where verses 1 through 8 come into play in chapter 21. So that sets it up a little bit, but this is also familiar territory, I hope. Maybe you've heard these verses before. I hope you have, because they are full of hope and they are full of our longing, what we long for as we live in this old space and we yearn for a new space. Right? And that's what our text describes for us. So let's read chapter 21, verses 1 to 8. The word of the Lord. Then I saw a new heaven and a new earth. For the first heaven and the first earth had passed away, and the sea was no more. And I saw the holy city, the new Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God, prepared as a bride adorned for her husband. And I heard a loud voice from the throne saying, Behold, the home of God, or the dwelling of God, is among human beings. He will dwell with them as their God, and they will be his peoples. And God himself will be with them. He will wipe every tear from their eyes. Death will be no more. Mourning and crying and pain will be no more. For the first things have passed away. And the one who is seated on the throne said, See, I am making all things new. And also he said, Write this, for these words are trustworthy and true. Then he said to me, It is done. I am the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end. To the thirsty I will give water as a gift from the spring of the water of life. Those who conquer will inherit these things, and I will be their God, and they will be my children. But as for the cowardly, the unbelieving, the polluted, the murderers, the fornicators, the sorcerers, the idolaters, and all liars, their place will be in the lake that burns with fire and sulfur, which is the second death. The word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. It's a powerful, positive vision. And it's really kind of two dimensions of this here. There is, on the one hand, there won't be this. That's the stuff that's passing away. There's a negative dimension. No more of this. No more of that first stuff, right? No more of that old stuff. But then there's the positive dimension. That is, here are the new, the renewal, things made new. So there's this contrast between the old and the new. And when you look at the text carefully, let's think about, okay, what's part of the old? What is this, the language in verse 1, for example? The first heaven and first earth have passed away. So what has passed? What is being described as having passed? Give me some of the language there. What are some of the details? What's past? What's no more? What? I'm sorry? No tears. No more tears. No death. What else? No what? Satan, did you say? S-E-A. Okay, got you. No sea. Right. No sea. No pain. Anything else? Okay, no mourning or crying, right? Anything else? What else is missing from this newness that was part of the oldness? Okay, the old earth, the kind of whatever that first earth was, and the first heaven and the first earth, that they have passed away. Right? Now, if you're looking at the first 4 verses, put your eyes down to verse 8. What else is going to be missing?
Cowardly, unbelieving,
Yeah. There's a list of, how would you characterize that list? Give me some words to describe that list.
Not holy people, unbelievers.
Did you say unholy?
Unbelievers.
Unbelievers? And
Yeah,
you said not holy? So you have kind of the presence of evil, we could say, right? Evil in different forms. Evil in terms of lying, evil in terms of cowardice, evil in terms of sexual immorality, so on. So the evil is gone. So let me put it this way, no evil, no moral evil. But that's part of the negativity here. That this movement from what was old as opposed to what is new creation, the contrast is important. Right? Pete, looked like you're about to say something. Oh, okay. No, all right. I was just getting ready for you. Okay, not a problem. All right. All right. Yeah, go ahead.
Sort of inspired after reading all that stuff. I thought this class sensitive together.
Mm.
And I put on the board, God wins.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's going to win.
Yeah. There's no doubt. This is about, God wins. All right. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, when we're thinking about this, what is it that this is the earth we experience now, This is our experience with tears and death. And by the way, when he says sea, what do you think he means by that? There's no more sea. Chaos. I think that's kind of right. Chaos. There's no more. Well, think about Revelation 13, verse 1. The beast comes out of the sea, right? Or this may be an allusion to Isaiah. What was it? What is that? Isaiah. Oh, yeah. Well, 25, 6 through 8 talks about the ending of death, and that God will wipe away every tear. Isaiah 25, 6 through 8. But there's also Isaiah 51, 10 and 11 that talks about doing away with the sea and talking about the Red Sea and the crossing of the sea, the Exodus. So the sea is taken away, right? So that Israel could go across on dry land. So to say no more sea is there's no more opposition, there's no more chaos, there's no more evil, there's no more opposition to what God is doing. There's no more opposition to the reign of God, right? So all that think about back Genesis 1. And Genesis 1 verse 2 says that it was that the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the deep, upon the waters, right? The waters. And the waters are a symbol of chaos and a symbol of disorder, or what is unordered, right? The new creation is not going to be that way. There's not going to be any more sea. I don't think that means literally no water, no H2O or something like that. But it means there's no death, no mourning. Because when you look at the language there in Revelation 21, it says, "And the first heaven and the first earth had passed away, and the sea was no more." Then we get a description of what's no more, right? What is no more? Well, when you get to verse 4, what is no more? Death is no more. Mourning is no more. Crying is no more. Pain is no more. So to say there's no more sea is just another way of saying, with a symbolic image, symbolism, to say there's no more sea is another way of saying, well, there's no more death. And there's no more pain. And there's no more tears. Right? It's not making a claim about whether there's going to be any H2O. in the new creation. It's making a claim that there's not going to be more chaos or evil, because the evil is going to be separated from the new creation. Remember, look in verse 8, that list that's there. By the way, what do you think cowardly is talking about? Cowards? I mean, is this kind of like the Wizard of Oz lion or something? You know, that the cowards are going to be. What's cowardly in Revelation? What might he be talking about? A coward? Yeah, John. Okay, all right. The losing your allegiance to God, caving under the pressure, you might say, compromising your faith, right? Right, not standing up for your belief. Yeah, I think that's probably what. And notice it's first. It's the first one, not sexual sin. That's not the first one, right? It's this cowardice, which we have said when we were going through the 7 letters to the churches, that the main problem is not fear of persecution. The main problem is the danger of assimilation, of assimilating to the empire and to become like the empire, and idolatry, which idolatry is in the list here in verse 8 as well. So when you're looking at the list in verse 8, it's not a list about here are the top 10 sins in the world. You know, this is a list that is particularly tailored to the situation that these Christians find themselves in, the dangers that Christians in the Greco-Roman Empire, in the Roman Empire, I should say, the Roman Empire, the dangers they faced. They faced dangers of sexuality. They faced dangers of idolatry. They faced dangers of cowardice and letting go of their allegiance and failing to act with courage in terms of their faith, and lying, maybe lying about their faith, right? When we look at liars there, we could say, oh yeah, you know, that even Andy Griffin was a liar, you know, right? He told those little white lies, you know, to help Barney out. So yeah, he's going to be in hell because he's a liar. Nah, I don't think that's the point here. I think the lying here has something to do not just with some abstract principle, but it has something to do with the situation of these churches. Maybe false representation of their faith, lying about their faith. Maybe saying, oh, I'm not a disciple of Jesus, and lying in that way. Because lying is last and cowardice is first in this list. And there may be like kind of, what's the word? Bookends, you know, kind of like bookends. Don't be a coward, don't lie about your faith. You know? So this isn't the verse you use to kind of say, you know, you tell those little white lies, you know, like your dress looks great today, you know, or whatever. Yeah, the hair looks wonderful, you know, whatever. Yeah, how does that relate, Brother Pete? Yeah, well, you are. You say you have no sin, you're a liar, right? I mean, that's, yeah, because, well, you say you have no sin, we know you're lying, because everybody has sin, right? Everyone has those moments when they are not fully living out their faith, whether by omission or commission, you know. So, yeah. But I don't think that's what he's talking about here. You know, talking about this kind of lying that happens under the pressure of culture, that you're being pressured into idolatry, or you're being pressured into national assimilation or cultural patriotism. And it's that kind of lying. It's the lying of a denial of Christ, right? That sort of lying. So that's all the no's, right? So it's important to think about how all this is passing. Now, so when he says the first earth and the first heaven are passing away, That doesn't mean, it seems to me, it doesn't mean that this earth that we're standing on is going into nothingness, passing away. Passing away could mean that it's going into annihilation so that nothing exists of it anymore. We're going to get something totally different. I think it means something like the experience of this earth, the way the earth is now, with its death and its brokenness and its evil, the way we experience the world now, that is what is passing away. So that when it passes away, something new is emerging. Right? It's a renewal of the earth. In fact, the word new here in Greek, there are two different words for Greek and for new. Two different Greek words. One is kind of like new out of nothing. Totally new. You know, a new creation in that sense. That I just did it out of nothing. But this word here is a word that means new in the sense of kind of renewal. So this stuff is going to pass away. And what is going to emerge on the other side is new, right? In terms of a renewal. Because notice what God says in verse 5. The one seated on the throne, which is the Father, see or behold, I am making all things new. Now, he did not say, try to catch this difference. He did not say, I am going to make all new things. He said, I'm going to make all things new. And all things includes heaven and earth. So I'm going to take heaven and earth, I'm going to take this old mess here, and I'm going to make it new. I'm going to take heaven and earth and make it new. And when I make it new, here's the way we can characterize that, right? So the positive things that are in this text that are described here. So what are some of the positive things that are in this text? What do you see? I mean, we do have the new heaven and earth and the new Jerusalem. But let's pause there for just a moment. The new Jerusalem. There's an old Jerusalem, and it's a Jerusalem that's been destroyed. The temple's been destroyed. Jerusalem has undergone all sorts of horror and pain and suffering and death. But there's going to be a new Jerusalem. And we're going to see this picture next week with this new Jerusalem descending out of heaven. How is this new Jerusalem described? It's new. But what are some of the other descriptions of this Jerusalem? It's a bride. An adorned bride. What's the emotion of that image? What is that conveying to you? That symbol. Pure, okay, purity. Anything else that comes with this kind of adorned bride? Beautifully adorned bride?
Did you say holy?
And say what?
Holy.
Holy, yeah, holy is part of this New Jerusalem, the holy city, right? Yeah, John? Relational, okay. So this sense of bride gives us a sense of relationship. Yeah, I think that works well. When you think about a wedding, you think about something new, right? Something that's it's a beginning, right? It's a new beginning, right? It's a renewal in some way. So the Jerusalem, there's an old Jerusalem, but there's a new Jerusalem. And this old Jerusalem is being made new. All things made new. So even Jerusalem is being made new. Where does this Jerusalem coming from? Yeah, it's coming from the throne room of God, right? It's coming, where's it going to? Yeah, it's coming down. This new Jerusalem is a reality that God has created, made new, the people of God, you might say. And it's that people of God, that Jerusalem, is coming down to the new earth. So it's not that the people of God are going up to a heavenly place, it's that the new Jerusalem is coming down to the new earth. So it's not like we're going to go to heaven as the final resting place, but rather heaven comes to earth for the final resting place. Yeah.
What's your take on what Paul said in Corinthians, that he was going into heaven and he couldn't talk about it when he got back?
Yeah, he went up into the third heaven. Yeah. There is, that's true. That we don't, we have talked before about how the saints who have passed are resting in the arms of God, right? They are reigning with Christ in the throne room of God. That was Revelation 20, Revelation 7, Revelation 14. So there's a sense in which we go to heaven. When we die, we go to heaven. That is, we go to be with Christ. Right? But when the new earth appears and the new Jerusalem, that the people who have been redeemed by the blood of the Lamb, they are part of this new Jerusalem. They are part of the new people of God, the renewed people of God. And they, when the new heaven and new earth emerge and are created by God, that new Jerusalem will come to dwell on the earth. So we go to heaven when we die, in my opinion. I think that's the way to think about it. But we don't want to stay there. N.T. Wright puts it that way. Heaven's a great place to go, but you don't want to stay there because God has something bigger in mind. That is to bring us to earth, to a new earth that has no pain and no sorrow and no chaos, but a place of a new marriage, marriage renewal. We get this image in Isaiah and Jeremiah and other places of Israel, that God's going to remarry Israel, you might say. And that's the picture we have here, that in the end, God is going to remarry humanity. Humanity is going to be this bride. The church is the bride of Christ, according to Paul, right? Ephesians 5. So here, New Jerusalem is the people of God whom God is going to marry and dwell with. So you get that kind of excitement about newness, a new beginning. But it's not a new beginning. It's not a new Jerusalem out of nothing. No, there's been a people of God from the beginning. Israel, the church. But now we get this final vision of the people of God coming from heaven to earth, to dwell on the earth, and to live with God.
New garden.
Yeah.
The new garden, a new Eden.
That's going to come in the next section here, in the next vision, when we have the city with the wall around it and the gates that are open, and in the middle of the city is a garden. Yeah, so we get that picture. This new Jerusalem is going to be pictured as a city in which there is a garden. Yeah, where the tree of life is, the water of life. Yeah, yeah. So we'll get to that actually next week as well. Yeah, yeah, and I think that that's kind of the central point, isn't it? That the relationship with God. That the point here, even though there is this transition from old to new, the center of this, the center and the important point is that God dwells among us. That's the key point. Is that relational dimension, the bride idea, a marriage idea. And that's what we get there in verse 3. So let's pay attention to verse 3 for a moment, where you get this, the voice, the loud voice, the great voice, literally, the voice that comes from the throne. Behold, the dwelling of God. Now, when you think dwelling, what should pop into our head? Or what does pop into your head? The dwelling of God. Where's that language elsewhere in the Bible? God dwelling. The temple, yeah, tabernacle, temple, God dwelling. We also get that language with the incarnation, that the Word became flesh and dwelled among us. Or the indwelling of the Spirit, Romans 8. So the dwelling, so you get this kind of climactic, behold, finally. I think some translations even translate it, finally. It's finally here. The goal of God, the whole reason for this whole story is finally arrived. God now dwells with human beings, and he will dwell with them as their God, and they will be his. Does your translation say people or peoples? People, singular? Plural. Plural. Everybody's translation says plural? Singular? See, translation difference here.
People, a lot of people.
Yeah.
We're all one people because we're all God's people.
That's true. That is certainly true. But the actual word is plural here. That we will be his peoples. Which is when he's quoting this from Leviticus 26 and Ezekiel 37, is using language that comes from the prophets. And it's singular there. But John says it in the plural here, which I think reminds us of Revelation 7, where there's this multitude that no one can count. That's from what? Every nation, language, and tribe, right? God's going to have peoples, which we're all one people because we're all the New Jerusalem, right? So we're all one in one sense, but we're also diverse. We're from different languages and tribes and nations. So there's a diversity of peoples that God's going to dwell with. And maybe even in the new heaven and new earth, it's not that we're all going to be kind of Stepford people, right? We're not all going to be kind of mirror images of each other. That we're still going to have diversity. There's still going to be diversity in this new heaven and new earth. That there's going to maybe diversity of languages, going to be diversity of cultures, diversity of nations. That diversity is still going to be there, because diversity is not in itself a bad thing. Right? It's not in and of itself an evil. It rather is an enriching dimension to our experience and to being human and living in different geographical locations. So you can't dress the same way in Alaska that you dress in Guatemala. Right? You just don't do that. Right? Or you don't eat the same things. So diversity is a part of being a part of the creation. So I think peoples here is kind of an intentional thing to remind us that this is not a monolithic people. that is just one culture or one ethnicity or one language. It's peoples. But the point is, God's going to dwell with them. The dwelling of God. God's going to make his home. God is going to, with the new Jerusalem coming down to earth, God is like a husband coming to dwell in the home with his bride.
And there will be no temple.
There'll be no temple, right?
Because God is present. So why would we need
God fills the whole earth, right? So the whole earth is God's temple, in that sense. Yeah. You're jumping ahead for me, Nancy. But that's okay. Yeah, you're anticipating, and I appreciate that. I appreciate that. At least you're not going to 1 John. Yeah, okay. Yeah, yes, you did, and that's why I could say what I said. Yeah, because I knew you would. Ah, there you go. All right, let's move down a little bit here. We talked about verse 5 a little bit, but let's get to verse 7 in particular, because we're about to run out of time. When we do have this, saying in verse 6, it is done. This is it. This is the point. This is what it was all about. It's done. God dwelling with humanity. God dwelling with God's people upon the new earth, under the new heaven. Right? And I think new heaven and new earth is kind of cosmic language. But let me get directly to verse 7. Again, though, that verse 6, there's so much to talk about here. Verse 6, I am the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end. God says, I'm in control. I was here at the beginning, I'm here at the end. There's a constant faithfulness of God. There's a constant sovereignty of God. That God is working this out. This was never out of control. It was never kind of God losing control. God is the Alpha and the Omega. He's the beginning and the end. And God will share life with his people, the water of life. But look at verse in particular, verse 7. I think this is one of the most astounding statements in the whole book of Revelation. Those who conquer. Remember that language. Those who overcome. Remember the language from the letters to the 7 churches. Right? To the one who overcomes, I will give a tree of life. I will give a seat on the throne. Or all those languages, all that language about to those who overcome. To those who have victory, I will give a wreath, a victory wreath, a crown of life. Right? That's the same language here. Those who overcome. That is, those who don't assimilate, those who remain steadfast, faithful, those who are courageous, those who speak the truth, those who maintain their allegiance with the Lamb, those who follow the Lamb, those who overcome, even if they must die and bear witness with their life, will inherit these things. They will inherit these things. Now, the word inherit, I think, is very important here. It's the language of Israel. Israel inherits the land. Israel is given an inheritance, and the inheritance is the land. Psalm 37, the meek will inherit the earth, which Jesus quotes in one of the Beatitudes in Matthew 5. The meek will inherit the earth. Or in Romans chapter 4, verse 13, Abraham is called the heir of the cosmos, the one who will inherit the cosmos, not just a strip of land that we call Palestine or Israel, but the cosmos. Abraham's going to inherit the cosmos. If we are the children of Abraham, then we are heirs of the promise. Galatians 3, verse 29. Right? We are co-heirs with Christ, with the Messiah. Romans chapter 8, verse 17. So we are heirs, and we will inherit these things. The one who overcomes will inherit these what things? What things are we talking about? We didn't continue our list here, but all this list, right? New heaven and new earth, the new Jerusalem, the dwelling of God, God's faithfulness, God's sense of relationship with us. We're going to inherit all these things. In other words, this is the conclusion of the Abrahamic promise, the promise to Abraham, that through you I will bless all nations, and I will give you this land. And the land is not just the strip in the Levant. It is the heavens and the earth. I'm going to give you the cosmos, a new cosmos, a new heaven, a new earth.
Studying this, John, my mind kept going to Hebrews 11 about those people that were sawed in two and killed and all that.
Mm-hmm.
They never lost faith. They knew where they had.
So, in Hebrews 11, we have the testimony of faith. By faith, all these endured what they endured. And Abraham was looking for that city founded by God, which fits in here. The New Jerusalem is descending to the earth as an eternal inheritance for the people of God, right? And that the result of that is I will be their God, and they will be my children. It's actually not children, though. It's actually my son, literally. I will be their God, and they will be my son. Remember, Israel was the firstborn son among the nations. It's kind of the singular identity. I think children is okay translation because it gives us kind of it's not gender specific, and I don't think the point is gender specific. The point is that God is going to have a son. God is going to have a child. Notice how he's mixing metaphors. So we have a husband and bride, right? Now we have a parent and child. Two different metaphors, but both. What would be the commonality between those two metaphors? Husband and wife, parent and child. How are those alike? Love, okay. Love would be part of that. Intimacy would be part of that. Family would be part of that. So a metaphor for relationality, relationship, intimacy, and love, right? Yeah. But it's not one or the other. It's kind of, we're using these human analogies to try to capture the kind of intimacy that God yearns for with us. And so that our hope is not primarily a new heaven and new earth. That is part of the gift that God brings, I think. But the hope is primarily to be in relationship with God, to dwell with God. And I think the picture here is we will dwell with God in a new cosmos, a new creation, a renewal of the old. It's not an annihilation of the old. It is a redemption of the old. It's a redemption, just like resurrection is redemption. We die, but we are raised. We're renewed, we're redeemed. And that's going to be true not only of Jesus and his body and our bodies in death, but about the whole creation itself. God's going to redeem it and make it new. And there we will dwell with God forever. Okay? May the grace of our Lord Jesus Christ and the love of God and the communion of the Holy Spirit be with us all. Amen.